I said yesterday that I was going to say a bit more about the manifest image and the scientific image, because I think, especially on the topic of free will, it's very important to get clear about what the difference is between them, and they're both perfectly real. Let me just remind you of a few things that are in the manifest image. Colors. Colors are part of our manifest image unless we're colorblind. Living things and agents. Opportunities. There are opportunities in the manifest image. That's one of the things that we recognize. Free will. Dollars. There's dollars, perfectly good things. Scientific image has proteins and atoms and quarks and maybe strings, we'll get around to that. And so here's a whole bunch of different things, and they're obviously very different. Opportunities and dollars are not very much like atoms and quarks. And they all, as Stephen was saying yesterday, they're all real in some sense, but maybe they're different senses. And the question of how to negotiate back and forth between the two images is the problem that Sellers recommends to philosophers, and I think he's right, and I take myself to be involved in helping people see how to get back and forth between these two images. And free will is one of the most important ones. But there's two approaches. Let's go back from, there's the hard-nosed approach and the diplomatic approach. The hard-nosed approach says, from the scientist, X doesn't exist, it's just an illusion. It doesn't exist. Colors don't exist. The alternative is, it exists, but it's quite different from what tradition supposes. Now, look at a few cases and decide for yourself how you would go on these. Time. Does it exist?
It does.
But it isn't quite what people think it is, right?
It may or may not be, but it certainly exists.
Yeah. Causation.
It doesn't exist.
How about color?
Apparently he's going to give the answers.
Yeah. Color.
Color exists, sure.
Yeah. Even though atoms, even though fermions and bosons aren't colored.
Does time
Okay.
exist in time?
No.
All right. How about dollars? They exist. Euros, yeah. Okay. So it seems that people here aren't very hard-nosed about this. They tend to take the opposite. But when it comes to free will,
Well, the mad dog naturalist might take the hard
well,
nose.
indeed. But when it comes to free will, what I've discovered in the last few years is there's a veritable army, a veritable chorus of distinguished neuroscientists and other scientists that say, take the hard-nosed approach to this. They say, free will doesn't exist, it's an illusion. And I think they're making some huge mistakes, and I want to just outline them briefly. Well, why do they think so? Well, let's look at Dilbert for a minute. This epitomizes the free will issue. Think the chemistry of the brain controls what people do? Well, of course. And how can we blame people for their actions? Because people have free will to do as they choose. Are you saying that free will is not part of the brain? Of course it is, but it's the part of the brain that's out there just being kind of free. Love the hand waving there. So you're saying the free will part of the brain is exempt from the natural laws of science, physics? Obviously, otherwise we couldn't blame people for anything they do. You think the free will part of the brain is attached, or does it just float nearby? Shut up.
His tail is wagging.
Yeah. Yeah. Dilbert says, shut up. All right. Now, I think that actually captures the quandary of the free will problem really very well. We have all the elements that give people a problem. And here's my tentative diagnosis of what these neuroscientists and others are doing. They argue these ideas seem to be incoherent. They're right. So free will must be an illusion. And I want to show there's a problem with this. I think free will is as real as colors and as real as dollars. But it's not quite what you think they are, any more than colors and dollars are what you think they are. So in order to get clear about what free will is, you have to abandon some of the ancient mythology, which is indeed incoherent. Here's Tom Wolfe, a canny observer of the social scene. Great phrase of his. the conclusion people out beyond the laboratory walls are drawing is, the fix is in, we're all hardwired. That, and don't blame me, I'm wired wrong. I think he's exactly right. That's the conclusion that is out beyond the laboratory walls. But I want to challenge it and say, look, oh, right, I left out a slide, I guess. Wired wrong? Okay, what would it be to be wired right? Is there any way that you could be wired right and have free will and have responsibility? That's really what the issue is. And I'm going to claim that nothing we have learned in neuroscience, nothing we've learned in naturalism shows that we can't be wired right for free will. But you have to understand something a little bit different by free will from what tradition would say. Everybody knows how to play rock, paper, and scissors. What's the best strategy?
There is no mixed strategy or no strategy.
Randomize. But we're lousy randomizers. So here's a good strategy. If you really were going to play this for money, go to a table of random numbers, copy down 100, memorize them or write them down on a piece of paper, consult them, go. You can't do better than that as long as you keep the piece of paper secret. Now, this idea of keeping your choices, having a poker face and keeping your choices hidden is, I think, deeply appreciated and is essential to the manifest image. But what's happened is that philosophers for several thousand years have thought it's not enough just to sort of keep your choices hidden. They've got to be completely hidden. They've got to be hidden absolutely. So you want to be somewhat unpredictable. And this has been inflated by philosophers for thousands of years into absolute unpredictability. Why? Because philosophers always inflate to absolutes when they can. It just makes life easier. Here's Jerry Fodor, for instance. One wants to be what tradition has it that Eve was when she bit the apple, perfectly free to do otherwise, so perfectly free, in fact, that even God couldn't tell which way she'd jump. Perfect expression of this inflated idea. Well, why does one want that? In other words, one wants a miracle. You can't have it, and you don't need it. All you need is to be unpredictable to the agents that you actually encounter. So let me sum up as a sort of challenge. If you think that indeterminism is required for free will, I think you're wrong, with one exception and one exception only. If you anticipate a future in which you think you are going to be playing rock, paper, and scissors for big stakes with God, then you better hope for quantum indeterminacy to play a role. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. A deterministic world is exactly as good as an indeterministic world. You can have just as much free will in a deterministic world as in an undetermined world, as long as you keep your list to yourself. Here's my hypothesis, that human beings, for thousands of years, have appreciated the value of a poker face. They have felt threatened whenever they see somebody who seems to be able to anticipate their decision making. If you've ever had a magician force a card on you, I hang around with card magicians some, and a friend of mine once did something he would never do in public. Very good card magician. He said, here, pick a card, any card, and he forced the 10 of diamonds on me. You know? Or I picked the 10 of diamonds, handed it back to him, shuffled the deck, just pick a card again. 10 of diamonds. Shuffle the deck, pick a card again, the 10 of diamonds. He forced the 10 of diamonds on me about 10 times in a row. And I was taking from the bottom of the deck. I was doing everything I could think of, and every time he anticipated me exactly right. It was extremely unnerving. I felt as if, my autonomy was really seriously abridged, and it was. Back to my rock, paper, and scissors. You want to act randomly. Rock, paper, and scissors is a pretty good model of the same thing, right? But how do you do that? Well, you got to make something happen in your brain that you yourself don't have any access to, so that you don't have a poker face, and then boom, you do one. So, in fact, ideally, if Panglossian God were to design you as a free agent to play rock, paper, and scissors, the soon effects would show up in your brain because you'd want them to show up. You wouldn't want to be able to see the effects churning away in your brain 8 or 10 seconds in advance that was going to determine your choice, because then you'd give it away with your poker face. So what subjects are doing in those experiments is doing something they have no idea what they're doing. They're sitting there going, I don't know. And somehow or other, they manage to provoke something to happen in their brain, which over a course of actually seconds.
Well, they don't provoke it, something else.
Of course.
Money,
Well,
the experimental
the experimental situation puts them in a condition where something happens in their brain which they can't report and which is somewhat predictive. There's some real problems with some of the predictiveness. First of all, notice that they're not actually predictive. They're predictive in the scientific sense, but it takes, hours of computation to get the predictions out. I used to say, as a sort of joke, the big moral of the Soon experiment is don't play rock, paper, and scissors for money with Soon with your head in an fMRI machine. But in fact, go right ahead, because it's going to take them an hour or two to analyze the data. So you
brain imaging is crude. That's not. I mean, Dan, presumably you would disagree with Stephen, in that at the point he made his decision to come here, you would say that decision was already predictable from first principles before he actually was consciously aware of having made that decision.
Well, I think that doesn't matter. There's a conditional prediction that I'm sure you could have made, and you could have gotten rich betting on it, namely that he would put all the factors that matter to him in the hopper, and he would say, yeah, I'm going to go. But, of course, if he listens to the radio 10 minutes before he decides and he hears about some crucial thing happening, then he isn't going to go.
Yeah.
So all bets are off. So when did he actually decide? He decided when he decided. And even though, look, suppose that there were political scientists who could study Congress, and 2 weeks in advance, they could predict how Congress was going to vote on a bill. And suppose they were accurate.
They are, no.
Yeah.
We usually-
When did Congress decide?
That gets back to the
When
question
they
if
voted.
money is real.
They decided when they voted. The fact